Day 6. Holy Mary, Queen of Angels, listen to the cries of children.
The spontaneity of children expresses the precious gift of life, but their lost cry is a painful indictment of our adult selfishness. Mary, Mother of all human beings, invites us to be children of God and hers too, and to be brothers and sisters among ourselves.
Application. Not long after the birth of her little brother, little Lori began asking her parents to leave her alone with the newborn child. They were worried because, like all 4-year-old children, she could show jealousy. But Lori showed no signs of conflict over time. Rather, did she treat her little brother with kindness, and her request to be left alone with him became more and more insistent. So one day her parents decided to allow her to do so. Happy, Lori went into the child's room and closed the door. A small crack in the wood was enough for her curious parents to spy on her. They noticed that little Lori was playing peacefully. Then they saw her put her face next to her little brother's face and say softly, "Little baby brother, tell me what God is like. I am beginning to forget."
Rector Major's comment.
La nostra presenza salesiana accanto
Salesian presence alongside minors, marginalized and trodden on by the selfishness of adults, is one of the most significant and challenging educational actions today. But it is even more urgent to work in defense of boys and girls and other young people who have been exploited. Victims of all kinds of abuse, sexual abuse and abuse of power. Don Bosco did not discover his mission in front of a mirror, but in the pain of young people who had no hope or future. The Salesian of the 21st century cannot do any different. He will discover his own identity if he is able to share, as Don Bosco did, the discomfort and pain of every youngster left to their own devices in abuse, poverty and exploitation, bereft of any spiritual and material help, giving them a tangible experience of God's fatherhood, which can turn the stone the builders rejected into a cornerstone. Salesianity comes precisely from this need, revealing the beauty in every life, stained as it may be, and being a prophet of a new beginning. Salesian reference. The lady in the dream said, "Look." And the only advice from Father Cafasso had been, "Look around you." And so John began to see. On construction sites, children as young as 8 or 10 years old worked as laborers for the masons. They would fill tubs with tiles and lime, carrying them on their shoulders and climbing rope ladders and scaffolding. If they worked too slowly, the foreman would beat them. The Porto Palazzo marketplace instead swarmed with young people who had not learned a trade. Most of them did not know how to read or write. Don Bosco spent the most terrible hours of his first period in Turin with young men in prison. Boys between the ages of 12 and 18, like ragamuffins full of lice, found themselves without a job, with only water and bread behind iron bars. They were strong and talented, but far from being able to hope for a home, work or school. They stared skeptically at the young priest, who brought them fruit, chocolates and tobacco. He wanted to be their friend, talked about the value and dignity of each person, but when he returned to see them, everything was destroyed. What had seemed like emerging friendships were dead. The faces had gone back to being threatening, and Don Bosco could not always overcome his despondency. One day, he burst into tears. In the gloomy room, there was a moment of hesitation. "Why is that priest crying?" someone asked. "Because he loves us. My mother would be crying too if she could see me here." Testimony from the Salesian world.
A prayer for all the Salesian family. My name is Edilma. I am a Salesian cooperator in Belo Horizonte province, Brazil. My love for Our Lady began as a teenager when the Daughters of Mary Help of Christians came to work in a rural community where I was living. From then on, my life changed completely. Because living with the Daughters of Mary Help of Christians, I came to know about the Salesian cooperators and the work they were doing with poor children at the Laura Vicuña Festive Oratory. Working with poor children is a privilege because they teach us much more than we could imagine. They teach us what is love, affection, solidarity. They teach us about cheerfulness, faith, despite all the poverty they have, and they pass on a happiness that I cannot explain. When I began working with them, I thought I would be able to teach them something, but in reality, it was they who taught me. Because every gesture of solidarity that children have towards those who are more unfortunate than themselves gives us a lot of peace. I sought to pass on to them what Don Bosco taught us, to form good Christians and upright citizens. It is not easy, but I have Mary Help of Christians with me as a teacher. And just as it was for Don Bosco, she teaches me how to bring Jesus to these children. Entrustment to Mary. Wrap us in your mantle, O Mother, and make us capable of listening, liberating, tenderly welcoming the defenseless children, innocent victims of violence, our violence. Help us to be the voice of the many children who have no voice, of those who are marginalized, mistreated, without rights. Help us to see your Son in each one of them, he who came into our world as a helpless child.